Um, so this has nothing to do with the power sector. It's basically at the realm of ideas. So, look at this road. I mean, all of you all would have experienced that if you have a European or American colleague traveling with you and they see such a road outside the airport or a station, the first thing is that India is so chaotic. And as a person who studies mythology, this is not chaos at all. It's, for me, when you see it, when you understand where it comes from. I don't know if you can see the image clearly in the presentation. It's a road. And if you look carefully, you're not sure whether it's going left to right or right to left. There's a market in the middle of the road. And it's a typical Indian street. You see, when people use the word chaos, they're comparing it with a European or American, or this is a Korean street, which is perpendicular, where everything is predictable and perpendicular, and anywhere you go, anywhere in the city, you see the same pattern. So when you compare this image with the previous image, this does look like chaos. But what we'll do is go on a journey through storytelling and try to understand why the Indian roads like this, and no matter how hard you try, you will never achieve this. And I know we aspire for this, and everybody wants this to happen. It will never happen. You see, for that you have to understand a model, a simple model of understanding that business, or whatever you see as the end product, depends on how people behave, and how people behave depend on how people think, or what they believe in, or what they believe is right. And to find out what people believe is right, or how they imagine, now there are 5 billion people on earth, I can't talk to all 5 billion people. What I can do is figure out what are the most important stories that they tell. And through stories, you'll see how people think, and you'll be able to appreciate why people behave in a particular way. Right now, in the previous session, when Mr. Parthasarathi was talking about China, I kept smiling because it is typical of Chinese behavior for the last 5,000 years. It's nothing unique for our lifetime. And Indians are behaving exactly as they did for 5,000 years. Nothing has changed. 60 years is not going to change that. And to understand this, we have to understand what order means. Order basically means human civilization and the control, where humans control resources. And by resources, I mean both nature and the human mind. This is what we mean by order. I control nature, I control the human mind. And this is an image which is about 4,000 years old from Mesopotamia. Now it is Iran and Iraq, that area. And this image shows a man controlling what is considered the monster of chaos, or Tiamat. It's from an old story called Enuma Elish. Chaos is the absence of human control. This is how people look at chaos. Absence of human control. So if I look at this picture, is there no human control over here? There is human control over here. However, we use the word chaos for this because what they're actually saying is there is absence of my control. I am not controlling this road. Or let me paraphrase this again. It means absence of central authority. One central authority. In the absence of one central authority, whatever organization takes place looks like chaos to me. You see, let's look at the primary Chinese storytelling. The primary Chinese storytelling revolves on a concept known as mandate of heaven, which means everything comes from heaven, which is reflected on earth through the central command called the emperor. And this has been so for a very long time. This is what has stabilized and created the great Chinese civilization. Replace the word emperor with central command and you see China is exactly that today. And that's exactly what Singapore is, and that's exactly what Taiwan is. There is the need for central control which creates order. Opposition is not tolerated. It is not tolerated in Singapore, however civilized they may be. When you look at Western ideas, and preferably you have to divide the Western ideas into two parts, Greek and biblical. And Greek thought was individualistic. They were anti-authoritarian. They didn't like the authority. So the stories are always about Greek gods who live on Olympus, who control, and the individual hero tries to defeat it. So it's anti-authority. And the biblical thought, which is pro-authority, which will always say the church is right, the book is right, the prophet is right, and you have to align with this. And so you see Western civilization balancing these two thoughts, Greek and biblical. Biblical is Monday to Friday. You follow what your boss tells you to do. Saturday and Sunday, you do what you want to do. And that's how society is considered normal society. Pro-authority, you have compromised between individualism and the collective. But this is not the way India thought. And now, unfortunately, Indians have the habit of saying we are different, and the fact is, unfortunately, we are. The subcontinent thought very differently. It's the only part of the world. Look at these three cultures, the China, to the east, to the west, the Greek and the Bible. They are all talking about external authority. Some external force, the king, God, outside, which controls things. Whether good, bad, indifferent doesn't matter. But authority is external. And we're craving for the Saturday and Sunday and the party time when I am in control. Indian thought revolves around internal authority. And the word which was used in the earliest scriptures is Brahma, but the words are different. I'm just using this word for the sake of convenience. So philosophically, there's an obsession with internal control. And look at these two images. On one side is nature, which is Matsya Nyaya, which basically means big fish eat the small fish, which is the way of nature, where the big will be strong, and the big, the fit will survive. And the other side, you have a man whose forehead is painted, because that is the only part of the body that challenges nature's law, which says that no, in human society, the big need not dominate the small. And that is the human imagination. And that's the only thing which can be subversive about control and authority. So the Indian thought always was a conflict between nature and the human mind. And what do you really control? I mean, there's a very famous serial right now going on called Devon Ki Dev Mahadev. And this is a image from there. It shows Shiva beheading Daksha Prajapati. And basically, it's a conflict between Daksha Prajapati is authority. He's trying to control society through rules and law. And his head is cut. Because they're asking, who do you actually control? Can you control an organization? Can you control a human being? Or do you control nature? So they're talking about authority at an internal level. What is supremely civilization? External control or internal control? And that's the point which comes in the Indian thought. You see, in India, what mattered ultimately was individual control. Not external control, not organizational control, but individual control. And therefore, at a very large level, it was the land of the sages. And even now, India is considered the land of sages. What it means technically is a land where individuals are expected to be generous to other people. That is civilized conduct, where you are generous. So Western individualism is, I matter, nobody else matters. Indian individualism is, I am capable of thinking about you, and you can be infinity. That's individualism in India, very different from Greek individualism. It is not Saturday, Sunday individualism. It is individualism where I think about you. You matter. Not I matter, but you matter. And how does this manifest? And therefore in India, we had not one god, but you had multiple gods. So you had Ishta Devata, personal god, Kula Devata, family god, Grama Devata, village god. You had different gods for different contexts. Basically saying that we have to accommodate many thoughts processes. It is not my way only or your way only. It should be your way and my way. Sometimes my way will dominate, sometimes your way will dominate. And that creates naturally the absence of central authority. And when there is absence of, so you see this fundamental slide of difference. Western thought will be binary, my way or your way, the right way. So even arguments, a PhD thesis is also where you have to defend your thesis. You are always looking for the right way. Either it is your way or my way, but it can't be both our ways. There is obsession with one way of thinking because there's only one life you're going to live. And if I don't agree with you and you don't agree with me, let's agree with God who is out there. But in India, the approach was very different. It said, depending on the context, you decide whose views matter. So it is, your way is also important, my way is also important, and we have to figure out a way in which your way is also accommodated and my way is also accommodated. Because you are also God and I am also God. We are all gods. And we have to accommodate each other. Now, this is not going to allow for a central control. So look at the year. This is the US dollar bill. I mean, I'm talking mythology and 5,000 years of history. Let's look at the modern US dollar bill. In America, many languages are spoken. Spanish is spoken. Arabic is spoken. But the US dollar bill will have only one language, English. This is Euro. Only two scripts, Greek and Latin. There are many languages spoken in Europe, but there is almost a discomfort with using different languages on the currency note. This is Indian. 17 languages. And we know there are more languages than this. I always do it, when I do international workshops, I tell people, I give you a blank check, make road signs for India, the perfect road sign for India. And I give them 1 hour, and none of them come up. Ultimately, they all come up with central authority and dictatorship. And that will not work in India at all. What is civilization? To allow people to be different, or to force them to be one way? So comparison, West, nature is chaos. Where human control is not, there is chaos. What is chaos in India? There's no word for chaos. The word for chaos in India basically means end of social order. There's always natural order. Nature's order will always be there. Then there is human order, and then there is individual order. And what we are trying to do is, when do individuals start to think about other people? That is civilization. Whenever I hear conversations about different countries, India is thinking only about India, and China is thinking only about China. That's not civilization. That's animal behavior, because every animal thinks for itself. Only the animal now is a nation state. So what is central order? Highly efficient, but extremely ineffective, because it will never, ever allow diversity. One way or no way. So today in China, whether you like it or not, Mandarin is the language which is going to be celebrated, not the other language. There are many languages in China. But central control wants efficiency, so only one language will thrive. And Mandarin is growing. Read the Breakout Nations written by Ruchir Sharma. He talks about how Mandarin is becoming the more popular language. Try doing that in India. It won't work. Yes, we are inefficient, but diversity will thrive. Everybody's voice will be heard. The road belongs to the three-wheeler, four-wheeler, two-wheeler, and the no-wheeler. You are allowed to walk even on your express highway. You can't do that in America. It's called jaywalking. You will be arrested immediately. Try doing that on an Indian expressway. The village will come and beat you up. So we have to ask ourselves, what do we consider civilization? And that's the whole idea. When you look at chaos the next time, and somebody looks at you and says, this is chaos. Remember, this is peripheral order, not central order. Because there's no one God, we are all gods, 5 billion gods. Last time the Indians wrote the book, they said 330 million. In the 21st century, it is 5 billion. Every human being has a right to live his way. And that's what creates Indian chaos. Thank you. Yeah, I think we have time for questions, I think. Can you keep the slide on, please, the slides? Can you keep the slides on in case I need to answer the questions, please? The slide on the screen. Thank you.
While you were giving the presentation about the fact that in India, central authority doesn't work, I was just looking and seeing pictures of what's been happening in Parliament.
Ji.
I would like you to comment on the fact that we're trying to follow a Western model in our politics, the Westminster model of Parliament.
Yeah.
And over a period of time, though I'm no great student of politics, but I've been just watching as a layman, the level of chaos and confusion seems to be increasing. While there are regional parties and regional interests, etc. I just wanted to comment on the fact that how effective do you see this model of governance continuing and being able to fulfill the aspirations, given what you pointed out is the Indian mindset?
See, the Indian systems are not based on Indian thought. We talk about non-violence, and what we have done is we have institutionalized violence in the form of the way the structures are designed. Violence is not physical violence. In India, violence is of two types, saguna and nirguna. So ahimsa is of two types. And what you see in Parliament is non-physical warfare. So it's mental warfare. I will disagree with you only because I sit in the opposition. It doesn't matter whether you're saying a good thing or a bad thing. By definition, my dharma is, because I'm sitting in the opposition, I have to oppose you. And so that's the model which has somehow happened, because we are sort of like Trishanku. We are stuck between being Indian and trying desperately to be European or American. And what's happening in these methods is that the whole idea, the words, look at the words which we use, consensus, which means one truth that both of us will agree on. That's never going to happen. So the method that we are following in a diverse country like ours is not going to enable us to move forward. So the only method then which works in such a situation is argue that, whether it's possible or not. But I think returning to ideas which are there in India, well, perhaps there are solutions. It just requires a little bit of smart leadership. That's all. Yes, sir.
Uh, in addition to that, I think the very idea of every individual being infinite and eternal,
Ji.
it conflicts with the Western model of timescales.
Yes.
Last 3-4 days, we've been talking about 2020, 2030, 2050. And in our system of thinking, these are very minor goals because everything is going to be forever.
Yeah.
And that conflict, I think, also
Yeah.
is very important.
Yes, you see, the Western models are what is called goal-driven. So the Greek model, we have to be careful. The Chinese are not goal-driven. Yeah, we want to be very clear. The Western model is goal-driven. So the Greeks will talk about Elysium. When I achieve something, I will go to heaven. So just do it, that option. And the Christians have the promised land. So one day all of us will reach the promised land. And entire management, which is taught in every business school all over the world, is based on the vision statement, which is essentially a Western model. So what we don't realize is the model that we follow when we speak. So as a mythologist, if I decode language across television, it is always the Western model. And the Chinese are also following the Western model. But what has happened is, I think intuitively all our natural cultural alignments come forward. The Chinese model is not where do you want to go, but where are you right now. It's a very here and now culture. So they're very pragmatic cultures. They're not speculative at all. It's a very, very pragmatic culture. Okay, done? So thank you very much. Thank you.